Breaking news tonight. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was delivering one of the most closely watched speeches of this war, Israeli officials said a new barrage of missiles had been launched from Iran toward Israel. Missile warnings during a sitting prime minister's wartime address are not just another headline in this conflict. They are a stark reminder that the distance between political theater and direct military danger in the Middle East has now become dangerously small. Welcome back. In this report, we're looking at what is confirmed, what is not confirmed, and why this moment has drawn such intense international attention. We'll walk through what happened as Netanyahu spoke, what Israeli and Iranian officials have said, how this fits into the broader war, and what it means for civilians, soldiers, and families now caught in a conflict that is expanding far beyond a single speech or a single day. Here is what we know tonight. Reuters and the Associated Press both reported that on March 12th, as Netanyahu was speaking publicly, Israeli military officials announced that they had detected a new barrage of missiles launched from Iran toward Israel. Reuters reported that missile sirens sounded in Israel during his address. The timing is central to why this story matters. Netanyahu was not speaking in some quiet political moment. He was defending the Israeli and American military campaign against Iran and issuing warnings toward Iran's new leadership, while the war itself was still unfolding in real time. What is also important is what has not been confirmed. There is no credible public reporting at this hour showing that Iran specifically targeted Netanyahu as an individual, or that a missile strike was aimed directly at the site of his speech. That distinction matters. In modern war, headlines can move faster than evidence. What has been confirmed is that Iranian missiles were launched toward Israel while Netanyahu was speaking, and that the overlap between his address and the incoming attack instantly raised the stakes of an already volatile moment. For viewers just joining this story, the broader background is essential. The conflict between Israel and Iran has been escalating with extraordinary speed, drawing in the United States and shaking the wider region. Reuters reported that Netanyahu used this latest appearance to defend the joint Israeli and U.S. assault on Iran and to warn Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, that he too could be at risk. At the same time, Associated Press reporting has described a war that is no longer limited to symbolic retaliation. It is affecting shipping routes, energy markets, regional security, and civilian life across multiple countries. So why did this particular speech matter so much? Because it came at a moment when Netanyahu was trying to do several things at once. He was speaking to the Israeli public, reassuring allies, sending a message to Tehran, and signaling that Israel does not intend to back down. In wartime, leaders often try to project calm, even as danger grows around them. But the missile alerts during this address undercut that image in the most dramatic way possible. They showed that even while Israel's leadership was talking about pressure, deterrence, and strategic goals, the threat from Iran remained active and immediate. That is where the political meaning of this moment becomes impossible to ignore. A wartime leader speaking under the shadow of incoming missiles sends one message to supporters and another to critics. Supporters may see resolve, proof that Netanyahu remains in command during a national emergency. Critics may see evidence that the war is widening faster than political leaders can control, and for ordinary civilians, the images and reports surrounding this moment can feel less like strategy and more like a warning that no public event, no city, and no family is fully outside the reach of the conflict. The human impact here is easy to lose in the speed of the news cycle, but it should not be ignored. Missile alerts are not abstract events for people in Israel. They mean parents reaching for children, families moving toward shelters, traffic slowing, phones lighting up with emergency warnings, and people trying to decide in seconds whether this is another near miss or something worse. On the Iranian side, civilians have also been facing the consequences of intense bombardment and military escalation. Reuters reported this month that Iran's UN envoy said more than 1,000 Iranian civilians had been killed in the war, a figure offered by Tehran and contested in the broader political battle over responsibility, but still a sign of the scale of suffering being claimed. Behind every official statement are people living through fear, displacement, and loss. That is also why careful language matters tonight. Some social media posts have framed this as Iran striking directly at Netanyahu in the middle of a declaration of war, but the verified reporting does not go that far. The evidence publicly available so far supports a narrower but still very serious description. Netanyahu was speaking during a major wartime appearance when Israel said Iran launched another missile barrage and warning sirens sounded. In a climate flooded with misinformation, that difference is not a technicality. It is the line between reporting and exaggeration. Still, even with that caution, the symbolism is powerful. Netanyahu's speech was meant to project authority. Instead, it became part of the story of how exposed the region remains. Israeli leaders have argued that sustained pressure is necessary to weaken Iran's military capabilities and deter future attacks. Iranian leaders and state media, meanwhile, have framed their strikes as retaliation against a much larger military campaign by Israel and the United States. Each side says it is acting out of necessity. Each side says the other escalated first. And with every new barrage, every new airstrike, and every new speech, the room for diplomacy appears to shrink. There is another layer to this that matters far beyond Israel and Iran. The wider region is watching closely because the consequences are no longer local. Associated Press has reported on rising energy prices, threats to shipping, attacks affecting Gulf states, and growing concern that a conflict once described as containable is becoming a broader Middle East crisis. When missiles are launched during a prime minister's speech, markets notice, militaries notice, diplomats notice, insurance companies notice. Families in places far from the front line notice too, because they understand that wars like this rarely stay neatly inside national borders. For the United States, the stakes are especially high. American forces, American diplomacy, and American political credibility are all tied to what happens next. Reuters and AP reporting both show that the United States is not a distant observer here. Washington is deeply connected to the military pressure being placed on Iran, and that means any further escalation carries direct implications for U.S. personnel, U.S. bases, U.S. partners, and global economic stability. For an American audience, this is not simply a foreign story happening somewhere else. It is a conflict with the potential to affect oil prices, troop deployments, election politics, and America's standing across the Middle East. Inside Israel, Netanyahu's own political position also hangs over every public appearance. Wartime speeches are never just about the external enemy, they are also about domestic legitimacy. A leader under pressure wants to look composed, decisive, and unshaken. But when an address is interrupted or overshadowed by missile warnings, that image becomes more complicated. For some viewers, it reinforces the argument that Israel faces a relentless threat and must continue fighting. For others, it raises a painful question. If the war is supposed to make Israel safer, why do moments like this appear to show the danger moving closer to the center of power rather than farther away? And then there is the military side of the equation. Missile barrages are about more than physical damage. They are also about tempo, psychology, and signal. Launching during a prominent speech can amplify anxiety even if interceptions prevent mass casualties. It can send a message that air defenses are being tested repeatedly and that normal political rituals can be disrupted at will. That does not prove a personal assassination attempt, but it does suggest an effort to keep Israeli society under constant pressure and to show that Tehran, despite sustained bombardment, still retains the capacity to threaten its adversary in real time. At the same time, Israeli defenses remain a major factor in how these attacks are experienced. Previous reporting from Reuters and AP has noted repeated interceptions of Iranian missiles and drones, even as some strikes and debris have caused injuries and damage. For civilians, however, an interception is not the same as peace. The sound of sirens, the run to shelter, the uncertainty, and the fear do lasting damage long before casualty numbers are updated. Children do not experience a missile alert as a strategic event. They experience it as terror. Parents do not measure danger in policy language. They measure it in seconds, in distance to a shelter, and in whether everyone makes it inside in time. On the Iranian side, ordinary people are living through another form of fear. Airstrikes, deaths, infrastructure damage, and uncertainty about what comes next have created a crisis that extends well beyond military targets. Reuters has reported civilian casualty claims made by Iran at the United Nations. And while wartime figures can be contested, the larger truth is not in doubt. Civilians in this conflict are paying an enormous price. That reality should remain at the center of any honest coverage. Wars are often narrated through leaders, missiles, and maps, but they are endured by families. To understand why the timing of this barrage landed so forcefully, it helps to remember what televised wartime speeches are supposed to do. They are meant to restore order through language. They tell frightened publics that the government is functioning, that commanders are focused, that strategy exists, and that the danger, however serious, is being managed. When alarms sound during that performance of control, the effect is powerful. It does not just interrupt a message, It competes with it. It tells the audience that events on the ground may be moving as fast as, or faster than, the words coming from the podium. That visual and emotional contrast is one reason this moment is likely to resonate well beyond this news cycle. Even people who did not hear the full speech can understand the image of a national leader talking about war while warnings sound around the country. For Israel's allies, that can sharpen arguments for more support and stronger coordination. For Israel's critics, it may reinforce concerns that military escalation is creating an endless chain of retaliation with no clear off-ramp. For Iran, the moment may be seen as evidence that it can still impose pressure despite the scale of the strikes against it. In that sense, the meaning of the event is being contested almost as intensely as the battlefield itself. There is also the question of precedent. This is not the first time Netanyahu has faced security alarms during a public appearance. Reuters reported years ago that he was rushed off stage during an election rally after sirens sounded warning of a rocket attack from Gaza, but the present situation is far more consequential. This is not a campaign event in a contained confrontation. This is a broader regional war involving Iran directly, with U.S. military involvement, global energy concerns, and the risk of miscalculations spreading across multiple fronts. That context turns what might once have been a dramatic domestic political scene into an event with international consequences. Diplomatically, moments like this make de-escalation harder. Leaders who come under visible threat often face stronger pressure at home not to compromise. Publics in fear are less likely to accept restraint. Rivals, meanwhile, may believe that continuing pressure creates leverage. That is one reason the danger is not limited to the missiles already launched. The danger lies in the decisions leaders make after the cameras stop rolling. A speech overshadowed by sirens can harden positions, deepen mistrust, and narrow the already thin space for back-channel negotiation. And yet this is exactly when precision in reporting matters most. There is a temptation in every fast-moving conflict to make the story larger than the confirmed facts. That temptation is especially strong online, where a careful sentence often loses ground to a dramatic one. But journalism has a different job. It has to separate what happened from what people assume happened. Tonight, the verified core of this story is serious enough on its own. Iran launched missiles toward Israel while Netanyahu was speaking. Sirens sounded during his address. The war intruded directly into one of the conflict's key political moments. That is the story. It does not need embellishment to be alarming. Tonight's central point, then, is both simple and serious. Iran did launch missiles toward Israel while Netanyahu was speaking, according to Israeli officials cited by Reuters and AP, and missile sirens sounded during his address. That alone makes this a significant wartime moment. But there is, at least for now, no verified public evidence that Iran specifically targeted Netanyahu himself during that speech. Responsible journalism has to hold both facts at the same time, even when online narratives push toward something more dramatic. What happens next may matter even more than what happened in that moment. If leaders on all sides treat scenes like this as proof that more force is the only answer, the cycle could deepen quickly. If they read it instead as evidence of how close the region is to a wider catastrophe, there may still be room, however narrow, for outside pressure and diplomacy. Right now, the momentum appears to favor escalation, not restraint. And that is why every speech, every launch, and every official statement now carries consequences far beyond the people standing at the podium. We'll continue following verified developments as they come in. For now, the clearest takeaway is this: a major wartime address by Israel's prime minister unfolded under the threat of an active Iranian missile barrage, and that image captures the danger of this conflict better than almost any speech ever could. If you found this report useful, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments, because in a story moving this fast, informed discussion matters more than ever.